Today is May 29th, 1982. I'm Opal Brown Garrity of Oklahoma City, taping at the Osage County Fairgrounds in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, for Living Legends of the Oklahoma Historical Society and Oklahoma Christian College. We have with us today Mrs. Bessie Tinker Potter, and she is talking with us. She's a relative of the Tinkers, right?
I'm a Tinker.
Okay, and we are talking with her, and we'll let her tell you her own name and her spell it for us. Be sure we know how it's spelled.
All right. My name is Bessie. The first name is Bessie Tinker, Tinker, and Potter, Potter. And what else now? My parents was Louis Tinker and Ida Mae Tinker, and her maiden name was Harness, Harness. I believe that's the way she spelled it. And let's see, I forgot what my birthday. I was born November the 11th, in 1894, up on Pond Creek. I always say up. I don't know if it was up or down, but anyway, it was up on Pond Creek with me, and in a log house. And then we moved on in another log house. It was on some different land, and there we lived in a log house. And let's see, did I leave out the other? I forgot where I was. I was going to tell about the log house now. The log house, and it was very crudely built, but nevertheless, that's where we lived. And there was a big room upstairs that wasn't finished, and you had to come down on crude stairways from up there. And one day, Mother had visitors, a lady visitor, and they was talking about, it was soon after Christmas, and they were talking about the new composition heads for dolls. They used to have those china heads, which was very breakable. Well, this was unbreakable, they said. Well, I came down. I was slowly coming down that old crude stairs, and I spied, I was thinking about that, and I spied a piece of wood, and I thought, well, now I'll just try old Minerva. That was my doll that I just got for Christmas. And I spied this chunk of wood, and I picked it up, and I thought, well, I'll just give old Minerva a crack. And I give her a crack across the face. It sure was, it didn't break her head, but she sure was wrinkled up. So that I learned a lesson right there, that there was more than one way to kill a cat without choking it to death. So then what else now?
You tell about what your parents did. Were they farmers, or and were they Osage? Were they Osage Indians? Why? Okay, tell us. All right, tell us about that, and then about your brothers and sisters.
Well, then what am I going to tell first? Oh, my parents lived on a farm, as I've said before, and my father raised a garden, good big garden, and he cured his own meat. When he butchered 12 hogs, because there's a big family of us at that time. That was later in years, and he smoked it with hickory smoke. And this old log house, by that time, had the floor all out of it, and they had built a new 4-roomed house. And they was, there was 9 girls in my parents' family, and I'm the eldest of the girls. They was 9. And then I had a brother Bill, and Jimmy Tinker, passed away when he was about 6 months old. And they was Bill, Bessie, Jimmy, Nora, or Isabel, Rose, and Cora, and Leela, and Idabel. How's that for a big family? And there's 2 sets of twins. They was my sister, Mrs. Nora Stingley, of Ponca City. She was next to me because we were tomboys of the family, and we really roamed the Tinker Hills and all the trails. And our favorite sport was riding stick horses. And I'll tell you, they sure was rough broncos. But we stayed with them. And we'd go and even we'd take one, and we had a rough bronco to ride. And we'd take those stick horses clear to the pasture, leave it, and bring another one home. You know, we just sure was tomboys. And our feet, we got the new shoes twice a year. And that was 4th of July because Elgin, Kansas was right near the line of the north part of Osage County. And they really celebrated the 4th of July. And that's when we got new shoes, new clothes, and really strutted our stuff on 4th of July. Mother had taken that for the army, and our family was a young army because Mother was used to cooking for a young army. And my dad, he was real friendly, and he'd invite anybody was standing around. They thought it was about noon, and maybe they was by themselves, so down he'd invite them. And we spread it on the ground, the tablecloths, and everybody pitched in. And Mother always took enough, so my dad felt free to invite anybody that might be looking hungry that time. And then on Christmas, we'd get new shoes, and sometimes they'd be summers with the big toe knocked off, but the end of it. But we always managed to go one shoe on, one off, if that happened to appear. And we all had beautiful hairs. There was 9 of us girls, and Mother took great pride in our family, the way we looked. And we all had pretty hair. And she had pretty hair, so she took good care of our hair. And 9 girls, you can just imagine what that would be. Well, what else now am I?
Okay, now you can tell us whether or not you were part Indian.
Yes, I'm a Lakota of the Osage Indian tribe of Indians, which I am very proud. And my number is, I forgot, but it's on the roll anyway. I can't remember right now. I'm kind of butterfly.
Were the celebrations you attended on the 4th of July, were they for both whites and Indians?
It wasn't for just one group of people. It was just it was neighbors and friends, and we got together. It was really a celebration of the 4th of July.
Some were Indians?
Well, they was in those days the Indians mingled more up that way because it was there was government buildings around, you know, and of course I was pretty small. But I remember it's certainly not like it used to be, you know, the cattle and the fences after a lot when they divided the lands and the money. They didn't have fences. Everybody just their stock mingled together. And I find it very much different. Being the age I am, I can see quite a bit of difference.
Since you had open range, how did you manage to keep your cattle separate from other people's cattle?
Well, I'll tell you, my dad had so many hogs, I don't think he even knew how many there were. And it was farming, and Mother was right there to keep cooking going on, and we usually had 1 or 2 men to work. And in those days, the flies was plentiful too. And Mother had a lot of company. Mother ever got away, she had to get up good before daylight and get us kids all ready and to be able to go any place. But we managed.
What about excuse me, what about her cooking for such a big group and for all that company? Did she cook it outside or inside or?
We had a great big wood range in the kitchen, and we didn't have electric. Well, that was out of the question. And that was in rub-a-dub-dub on the board and all such goes with it. And this big range had a big warming oven to keep the dishwater warm, and warming oven, and that is an art its own self, is that building that fire and keeping it. And Mother made light bread that was just delicious. And she never was, she'd bake about 12 loaves of great big loaves of bread and churn fresh butter just like you never tasted. And then Papa always liked biscuits. He didn't like light bread, and he just was kind of spoiled. Women nowadays, they kind of do what they want to do about it. But Mother didn't. She just was patient, and she had so many kids that she had to be patient. Well, anyway, this old stove, and you'd get that riled up, why, it sure made plenty of heat. And when we had company, why, it took 12 chickens. Mother had, we raised turkeys and geese, and she made feather beds, and that was one of my jobs, make feather beds. And there's an art about that, too. Well, anyway, this, when we had company, we was taught to not, to wait the second table and not stand around like we were trying to run them out, waiting the table. So unless we would, each couple of us would have a bushy limb, and we'd fan the table and while the grown people ate. And let's see, what else?
Well, did she do all of her cooking in there on that stove, or did she ever cook outside any?
Oh, I've got a good story for that. Mother used to make biscuits, of course, and then we went to school then to at Bartlesville. And Bartlesville was just nothing but a little station. And that is a grand old memory in my books, is about Bartlesville. And we went to school, but there weren't any schools, any like they have now. We went to school in the buildings, and one especially was the old band hall. That's where the town men had their band practice. And it was way up on stilts because that Caney River would really get out of control at times and be up as far as, I've seen it up as far as, I believe, up to 3rd Street. What it is now, I think it was then called 3rd Street. I think they changed it. Well, anyway, I've lost myself again.
What subjects did you learn in school, and were these schools Indian schools, or were they territory schools, or public?
Well, out to that Cousin Franklin Reboard, they didn't have tablets and pencils those days, and I remember the great big chart with the first letter words that I learned was CATDOD. And words like that, and we had number work on that, and everything was right on that old big chart. And the desks was just homemade. So that's the first remembrance of my school days. And at Bartlesville, we went in the old band hall, as I said, and finally, all the girls would make playhouses under that. You know, it was way up on stilts. Be sure that we didn't get flooded out. And then we went to school. I think I was all over Bartlesville in the early ages, grades. And I must have done pretty well because I learned quite a bit and had lots of friends. And the main families of Bartlesville then that I remember was the Morgan family and the Overlease family. And let's see. Oh, there was a Johnson family and very popular people talked a lot about and was big boosters for Bartlesville. And then, let's see. And my brother Bill and I, we would, it seemed like the snow, it snowed more then, or else it was just because I was little. Anyway, my brother would make the track in the snow, and the Catholic Church was just a one-room church. And my brother was an altar boy. And we would be pretty cold, going across those tracks. And in those days, it wasn't built up at all, the railroad tracks. We had all those to cross and on over to the Catholic Church. And then on to this school. And it was about halfway. It was quite a distance for little folks. And my brother would go in front of me, and I'd step in his track and made it easier for my going. And, I remember Miss Alice Dyson and Miss Cato, and those are old teachers that they remain in my heart forever. And then I went to school. My dad thought we ought to have education, a religious education. He was a Catholic, but he was, in those days, there was no way, they came from Pawhuska to up to the farm on mules and horses, rode horseback. And, of course, in those days, we didn't make our first communion until we was 12 years old. And I was baptized here in Pawhuska, Oklahoma, when I was 11 years old, and I made my first Holy Communion. I went to school, and had a sister went with me, and I had my own little First Communion dress made. And I felt pretty nice that I was old enough to do that so Mother wouldn't have to do it. And, well, I could just say an awful lot about that St. Louis school. That's pretty dear to my heart. And my teacher was Sister Jonette. And then there was Sister Teresa was a sister then, but later she became a Mother Teresa. And they left Pawhuska. And Sister Basilissa was the one that would always cry when we girls went home for vacation. She was so glad when we'd be back. And Sister Luciana was down in the kitchen, and we dared not come down those steps in her domain. And anyway, one time my mother was there, and I thought I was kind of a privileged character. So I ventured down in Sister Luciana's hallway, and she took a tea towel after me. In fun, I guess. Well, let's see. I've run out.
What did she do with the tea towel? Did she flip it?
That's a signal for me to take off. Okay. That was a signal when Sister Luciana flipped that tea towel at me. That was a signal for me to get back up those steps where I belonged. And this old school was, I hated to see that turned down. They had sort of a senior citizen meals out there, and that is awfully nice, I think, to go back, but I miss that old school. That's on the same grounds. And
why did you go to school at Bartlesville instead of Pawhuska?
Well, my dad, he bought a place in Bartlesville, and he just kind of wanted us to be near. I don't know how we come to move to Bartlesville. It was just a little place then. But that was his idea. And
you moved off of the farm then?
No, never moved off the farm.
But you just went there to go to school?
To give us the advantage of going to school. Okay. The reason why we went to Bartlesville is my dad thought that we had better advantages for school, and that's the reason. But we, on payment time, you had to come to Pawhuska to receive your payment, and of course that was a big celebration for all Indians. Osage Indians is to be there to get their payment. But now, after that, a short time after I was drawing my own, they would mail it. But we had to be there. And then I kind of remember of another school, that it was a subscription school. And I remember in the early days of being there.
Were there any schools, Indian schools for the Osages? There were Indian schools for other tribes. Now, did they?
There was a Hill School at Pawhuska, what was known as the Hill School, and they had school for boys and girls both there. But my dad was interested in our religious education, so that's why that he wanted us to. And this St. Louis school was a girls' school, and that's where I got my early training for Catholic religion. Is there?
Okay. Then St. Louis school was in Pawhuska.
That's the school I'm now speaking about.
Okay. And how often you mentioned about your father being Catholic? How did he come to be a Catholic?
Well, I just don't know. He just always a Catholic. He was.
Okay, I thought perhaps that he was taken into a Catholic school someplace, or
he
that.
Went to, well, I don't know where. My dad went to the old mission, and you know, in those days they weren't very many Catholic churches around the country, so they got him into school in the old mission school, St. Paul, I think. Yeah, that's one of them that I remember, St. Paul.
Where was St. Paul?
St. Paul is a town.
Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. That was the town, St. Paul.
Okay, then he must have come from up north down here.
They lived at the foot of Tinker Hill in the early days of his life, and that's how the Tinker Hill was named. And it was a long chain of continuous hills. And that's where that was named, as far as I remember.
Well, is this Tinker Hills, is that in Minnesota or
no,
where?
It's near Elgin. Okay. It's near Elgin, Kansas, this Tinker Hill. And that's how it got its name, because he lived there on the farm, and he raised the general crops and cattle and things like that.
You mentioned that everybody had to come to Pawhuska to get paid. Now, would you explain that just a little bit about what the payment was for?
Well, it was I don't know just how.
Well, the payment that the government paid the Indians, was that it? The government for their land that they took in Kansas, was that it?
The Indians divided that up, you know, and that was what they got.
Well, from the government. They got it from the government.
Well, I don't know.
Okay. How often?
Well, every 3 months. For the payments, and everybody would visit, you know, and come.
Now, can you tell us something about when you grew to young womanhood before you got married, and about the time that you did get married? Tell us about your husband and your family.
That my children. Yes. Well, I married Lee Burns, and his father's name was Henry Burns, and they lived there together in Elgin, Kansas. And we used to go to parties and entertainments, dances mostly in the. Who was that? No, he wasn't Indian. No, it was me that was Indian. I can't think of that.
Your children.
Well, I've got 3 children. I've got a daughter and I've got 2 sons. And Betty, Mrs. Betty Woody, and Leo Burns, and Louis Burns, or Lou Burns, sometimes they call him. I don't. I didn't. I guess everybody calls him Lou, but his mama. And let's see, I don't know. Louis he lives in California, and he's a retired teacher. And also his wife is was a retired teacher too. And let's see, what else was I? Betty lives in Duncan, and she married Morris Woody. And Louis lives in California, and Fallbrook, California. And Leo is a barber, and he's the only barber in Chautauqua County. And he has a barber shop in Sedan, Kansas, and also at Cedarville, Kansas. So he's a pretty busy barber. And Betty's just a home mother, housewife. And I have 7 grandchildren. And let me think, I almost have to take inventory. 7 grandchildren and 15 great grandchildren. I have 3 children and 7 grandchildren.
Okay, and they're probably scattered all over the world, as most people are.
I'm kind of just taking pictures myself, so I don't believe I'll go in details to try to get those located.
Now, tell us something about your activities. You still live here in Pawhuska. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and tell us about your activities here in Pawhuska since you have...
Well, I moved from the farm, the old Bollinger place. That's what it's known as, the old Bollinger homestead. And the Bollinger family lived there and had a big family. And that's what I was going to say.
What do you do now?
Oh, I married I married Stephen Bollinger. First, my husband. Then my children's father was Lee Burns. And I married Stephen Bollinger, and we was married about, over 28 years. And about 27 with Lee, my children's father. And then I kind of liked that married life, so about 5 years ago, I jumped the broomstick again. And so now my name is Potter, so I've just taken the alphabet as it goes. And I'm 87, but I believe I'll quit. And
how do you spend your time here now that you...
Oh, one of my most favorite hobbies now in my old age is just cut all the shines I can and just let my hair down and have a good time. And I guess that's, you have to be kind of honored to live way up in the 80s. And let's see, I like music. I play music, and that's been my most pleasant hobby, is to teach children without charge music. And I helped Mrs. Winfred Laverty out with all of her 32 children she had in the room, and from the 2nd grade up to the 5th. And then Mr. Wood, another teacher, had the other kids. But I love those smaller ones. And that's been my favorite thing. I'm not I just studied myself. That's the way. Yes, I'm self-taught, and I thought that would be a good way to keep on learning to help those children. And I used a little music primer and just started from 2 dots. 1 dot to the other makes a line. And, 5 lines is you can build an awful lot of music on 5 lines in those 4 spaces. So that is one of my most pleasant hobbies. And the most pleasant hobby was now, I belong to the American Legion Auxiliary and Post 198, which is an Indian, Osage Indian post. And I married a veteran, a good old post, and I married a veteran, a good old World War I veteran, and which I'm very proud, and I'm belong to that auxiliary, and I just love all of the not only just those, but I'm for all of the veterans. Anything I do, if I can help in any way, that's what I like to do. And I'm very over to the American Legion Post 198. I feel just so near to all of those people, and I've learned to love all of them, and they all call me Aunt Bessie. So you can just all call me Aunt Bessie because that means something to me. And let's see, I don't know.
How about powwows? Do you have them up in this area, and do you attend those? And do you ever dance?
Oh, my goodness, I'm a dancer. Oh, I just love to dance Indian. I'll tell you right now, I just don't let any of it go to waste. I just go right, when I hear those tom-toms, I'm just right out there on the floor. And I have a little granddaughter, the only one, I guess, that just takes to this Indian, and she was able to just dance and get out there, and she sure enjoyed it. But she became ill about a year ago, and she doesn't speak or anything, and she's missing all that good dancing. But she's trying hard to get back. And
where are the powwows held around in this area?
Well, I don't know, honey. They's out here. The Pawhuska has, they have dances here, and they have dances harmony, but it's about all I can do now at 87 to get down to this one. So I don't know too much about Skiatook and all of those places that on the reservation, but my heart's with them anyway, and that tom-tom is music to me.
You said you were working with the students. Is it school students and music, and is it piano? Is it piano or okay?
Yes, my music. I've got a piano, a Kimball, and I enjoy playing that. I like to play of a morning, and I'm not teaching, but I do have one pupil. She's an older lady, but the reason I volunteered to her that if I could be of any help with her music, why, I'd be so happy to do it, because she tried so hard to play, and I wanted to teach her how to read her notes, and she knew quite a bit about it because she was like me. She just learned it by working with it. And I always told my children that I taught music to, if they wanted to do it bad enough, they could do it, and just go right after it. And usually some of my students that I stayed with, and the reason I stayed with those all through their high school, and one was about 7 years old, and one was about 11 when she started. And I taught her all through till she was finished her school and high school, and they won medals for their playing the pieces that they learned. And I also kept a little girl that she was shifted from one place to the other, one home to the other, and Mr. and Mrs. Ben Hurst, it was their little niece, and they had her, and of course they had a small house on the farm, and they're lovely people, and I felt sorry because they had two boys, and they didn't hardly know that they was going to keep this little girl, so I volunteered to keep her through that term of school, that winter, and I taught her music, and she was able to play real nice, and I hope she's married now, and I don't know just where she is, but she was a lovely little girl, and she went to school at Herd School where Mrs. Winford Laverty taught, and I enjoyed everything, I guess, and I'm sort of cut up, you know. Yeah, that's the way to keep your youth. Just get right in there and be seen. And the only way you can do it is by action. So Sybil Allen and I make a pretty good team, and we're the monkey shiners in all of our meetings. And I really jig, too.
Tell us something about your husband now. Do you cook for him, keep his house, and pet him and all that?
Oh, I've got a wonderful husband, Arthur Potter. He was an old neighbor. Well, I say old. You know, he's a little bit younger than me, but he says I'm boss, but he's boss some of the time because his birthday comes. He'll be 87 before I'm 88, so he's boss during that time. But we're very agreeable, and he's a very nice man to get along with, and just always sit out on the porch and wave hello to all of our friends and make new friends, because when we sit out there, we aim to have them all to notice us. So I think we're going to be here a long time yet.
What did he do before he retired?
He was a farmer and stockman and lived just near the highway, 99 highway, on the way to Pawhuska or Elgin. And we met at schoolhouses, but little did we ever think he used to farm some of my land and put up hay, and I cooked for him while they was working, you know, and but, you know, we didn't even dream that we'd ever come out together. You know, most of our old friends that lived there then has all gone to heaven, and I hope, and I know they would, because was all good people. And we just come out together. I don't know how it happened.
Well, that's interesting. I know you've had a very happy life together, and you probably will continue to do so. Now, what is your relation to the Tinker for whom the Tinker Air Force Base was named?
Clarence, a brigadier general, I believe he was at the time. He was in the war, World War I, and of course was killed, and he lost a son in the World War I too. And he was a half brother to my grandfather, Bill Tinker. And Bill Tinker was on the council along with about the first of the councilmen, and you'll find his picture. And my husband, Stephen Bollinger, in the museum at the Willow Rock, and you don't want to miss seeing Willow Rock. We're very proud of Willow Rock, and it's beautiful. After my husband died, I was so lonely, I'd go out there and spend every Sunday after I'd go to church. And it was soothing, and watch all of them go. And I went to that little show that's there every Sunday. Well, let's see. I guess I've told what we don't think it's very far now. But anyway, I used to follow trails That used to be a great sport of mine when I was a kid. And I'd hit a trail, and sometimes the trail would go so close to the fences I'd have to put the stirrup over and my leg on the other side to keep them hanging in the wire. And I'd wind around on this Tinker Hill, and up on top of that hill, I wondered where that path would lead me. And I'd end up at a salt lick. And in those days, they just cut those great big slatted barrels in the middle and set them down the ways where it'd be handy for the cattle to lick salt. And that's generally what I found up there, and I sure enjoyed that.
Okay, and then you mentioned the Salt Lick. Now, was that a natural spring, or
No,
what was it?
The salt that they cut, it was in those barrels. It was bulk salt, and the cattle have to have salt, and they just cut a big barrel in the middle and sink it down in the ground, and where it would be convenient for cattle to go and lick, you know. And it's beautiful up there.
The ranchers then placed the salt barrels up there, and the salt did not come from the earth.
Well, it did someplace. But no, it was salt. Everybody knows what salt is, just loose salt. And in those slats, you know, they're about that big. And then my sister, did I tell about the stick horse rides that my sister and I had? Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. Well, I was always getting Nora, and Nora Stingley was next to me. She was my sister next oldest to me. And, or younger, I meant to say. I was the main oldest of all. Well, anyway, let's see. I can't hardly think of what I want to say.
You were talking about Nora Stingley, but I was.
I know one about our hogs got in the garden, and my dad had a lot of hounds. He was a coon hunter, and he liked to hunt coon with the neighbors. And so he tried to run those, get those dogs, those hounds, and that wasn't what they were supposed to be. And anyway, he tried to get them to run those hogs out of there, and he couldn't do it. But then when he did get them out, why, he just shot all of them. All but one, and Bill and I, my brother, we ran her off. She was an old blue tick hound and big floppy ears, and we rocked her off over Pond Creek so she wouldn't get killed.
I heard you mention blue tick hound, and I hadn't heard that expression in a long, long time. Tell us what a blue tick hound is.
Well, it's just an old blue spotted, a blue spotted in color, and just kind of dark spots on it is all I know. And you know, my husband wanted to have one, but I'll tell you, I had all I wanted of those hounds. And if anybody was coming, you'd hear the buggies and the wagons roll over the rocks almost. Well, it was clear down where we used to ride to take the stick horses to pasture. And they was all barking.
Okay, well, I know you're getting tired. And
No, I'm not.
You're not.
I'm getting warmed up.
Okay. Well, you just go right ahead then and tell us
think
more.
of, well, I'm bound to get that up from here. I want to tell about the way we traveled to Bartlesville in the early days, and was in a covered wagon. It took us 2 days to make the trip. And when we went for school, why, we took our old cow and the dog, and we always had a cow in there. There's nothing like having a town herd. And my brother usually took care of that town herd. And out where the Phillips, all of those buildings are. It brings a memory to me every time I pass there. Well, anyway, this covered wagon, and my dad, we thought my dad's word was solid. We really took him at his word. we'd at night, my dad would hobble the horses. The front feet was hobbled with rope, and so they wouldn't linger off. And we always camped, tried to get to Rattlesnake Springs. I don't know whether you know about Rattlesnake Springs, but that was a famous camping place for us near the road. And I've also been in that rattlesnake cave. And I found all over the walls initials, probably from old cowboys. And you know, there's a lot of desperados at that time. And names and initials, and it looked like a campfire had been there just before we got there. You know, but it's smothered down. And I don't think you can get in that cave now, but that was, I made the trip horseback from up to the farm on Pond Creek to Bartlesville, horseback. And I've also rode in a Surrey with the fringe on top there at Bartlesville, and the covered wagon and a buckboard. And we drove old Pumpkin, the buckboard. And when we'd camp, after the horses was hobbled, we had a mess box on the back of our wagon. They'd unload that, and it had a leaf that let down and made a table, a work table. And all the provisions that we needed was in that box. And the dog, our dogs, they usually always went, and they'd get under that wagon. They was pretty wise because it was hot. And they'd get under that wagon walking, and other things, they was cowards. Any dog would run out at them, why they'd sure be safe if they was under that wagon. Well, I'll go back to after the horses was hobbled and the mess box was down, and my dad, he'd hunt a crooked stick to make the coffee and build a fire and get camp really on its way. And Mother, she'd be making biscuits, and we had a Dutch oven. I don't know, I can't explain it, I can draw it, but anyway, it was a Dutch oven. And you put coals on top of it's kind of sunken, the lid is, and it's up, has little legs, 4 legs, and it's a black one of those iron kettles. And she'd make, the biscuits would just be so good. And of course my dad, he wasn't a light bread eater, and I don't care how good it was. But anyway, we had biscuits, and we had our own cow, and we'd milk and out on at the camp. And at night, my dad would put tongue up and make put a tarpaulin over that for cover, and he'd had a big lariat rope that he'd spread around that whole pallet, and he told us that no snake would cross that lariat, and we took him at his word. We felt safe under there. And that's where we slept peacefully till early the next morning. Mother made the hot biscuits and fried good cured ham, and we always had the very best to eat, but we didn't have much money in those days. And you didn't need one because you was out in the country, and we was really wild. We enjoyed the wildness and the nature. And especially me and Nora. We was the mud ducks of the family. And let's see. And then maybe we'd finally make it into Bartlesville. And along in the evening. And thus another school day was going to start.
Okay, this has certainly been interesting. And we just appreciate it so very, very much. We've been talking with Bessie Tinker Potter of Pawhuska, and we appreciate everything that you've told us, and I'm sure you've told us a lot of things that won't be on anybody else's agenda but yours. She's going to tell us now about the old churn. She forgot something, and also about the aspidity or some of the remedies.
The old remedies. Well, I want to tell you this. Lewis requested this one. My son wanted me to not forget to tell this, and my job was to skim the cream. We had a cellar, and I was to go down in the cellar and skim the cream. And it was a big stone churn with a dasher, and we'd get out. The other kids was out playing, and of course I wasn't but a kid too, so I played now and then. And this old hound, it ventured up there, and it sure lapped that churn dash. He kept twice he got there, and but you know we was all good and healthy and didn't make us sick. We were good and healthy, and you know I'm 87 and I'm still a going. And another thing. Mother's old remedies, we never run to the doctors. Mother, she'd use the old surface squills and the castor for the babies when we wouldn't, us bigger kids didn't get it and drink it up. And Mother would use skunk grease when we had croup and bad colds. And another thing we used was aspidity, and I wore that to school. I just sure did chew it up too. And Mother'd make onion poultices and put on us when we had croup or bad colds. And when that onions got cold and it had done its remedy, why then I didn't waste a bit of it. I just ate it. Ate the onions out of that bag.
You mentioned skunk grease.
Yeah.
Tell us just a little bit about that. Did it have the odor?
Oh, yeah. I suppose that I smelled like a skunk, but then that was Mother's remedy, and I guess all the other farmers and kids had it on too, so they didn't smell it. And let's see. Well, I've got 1,000. I've got one about me breaking the filly. Go ahead and tell. Well, I heard my dad speak about, there's something else that my son, I think he requested this one too, that I heard my dad speak about to some of the men that was visitors, that he had a filly that he wanted to break. And so I didn't do a thing. I was getting up there at kind of the age that I didn't want to play house and ride stick horses then, and I was trying to think up. I was restless, getting up to that restless age, and I got that filly. And this filly had followed us kids around with those horses that we'd ride, and they knew us. You know, they didn't harm us or kick or anything. You know, they just gentle. So I got a rope on her. She never had a rope on her. I bridled her. I took her to the post where my dad had saddled those broncs, and I put the bridle on her, and she took the bits just like any old saddle horse. And then I eased up because I had seen how bad that they could act with that other one, the papa broke. And I put the blanket on her, and I eased up with the saddle. And I was expecting her to do something, but she didn't. She was just used to being around us kids. And probably if it had been a man, she'd just kicked ever all around. And then I put the saddle on. I thought sure she'd do something when I girded it up on her tummy. And she didn't do a thing, and that wasn't all I did. You know, I led that filly out there and where I could get on her, and I got on her, and she didn't buck or nothing. So I rode up where I could call, Mama, Mama, come to the door. And when my poor mother got to the door, she almost collapsed, seeing me on that horse, you know. And she told me to get off of that horse. I asked her if I couldn't ride her into town. Oh, my hair stands up on the ends right now, talking about it now, but I could ride pretty good. I thought I was good enough to ride her. And, well, I got off. And thus, my dad's favorite story when company came to tell about the filly that was, he was trying to find some man to break it, and there I had gone out there, and I was about 14 or 15, I guess, at that time. Well, I guess that's...
Okay, well, we surely do appreciate all this good information you have given us, and I know that you have many more stories that you could tell us here. So maybe we can come and get you again sometime and let you